How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Fibs Reacts, and in today's video we are going to be making a tier list for the Spider-Man movies. Let's go. Alright, so we have a lot to get into here, so we're just going to hop right into it. So to start things out, we have the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire playing the character of Peter Parker. Now, as a kid who grew up in the early 2000s, these were obviously basically my first introduction to Spider-Man. Aside from, the cartoons I used to watch, like the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. Prior to this, there really wasn't a live action version of Spider-Man that we had seen before. So this was a very groundbreaking moment for, comic book movies. I mean, this is basically where it all started. I mean, this is where like things really got kicked off for not just Marvel, but just comic book movies in general. So starting out with Spider-Man 1, it's a classic. It's a bit nostalgic for me. I think that Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin is just perfect, and the cast overall, Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker is. I don't think I like it as much as a lot of other people seem to like it. It's nothing against Tobey Maguire. I think he's a fine actor, and he does seem to kind of embody that kind of awkward kind of dorkiness to Peter Parker. And there are, plenty of moments where it's almost just pure cringe and kind of hard to get through. But this is, it's an origin movie. It tells us all of the background of how, Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man, his relationships with Mary Jane, with Uncle Ben, with Aunt May. I think the Green Goblin suit was, I don't know, like I'm not too crazy about it, like that it's, kind of this, tech kind of armor kind of thing. But I could see, the challenge in trying to bring the Green Goblin from the comics into live action. I could see how that would kind of be a challenge just because of, how he looks in the comics. It's very campy, his look in the comics with the purple costume and the long hat and everything. But overall, it's a good movie, it's definitely rewatchable. So I'm gonna put Spider-Man 1 in I'll put it in the A column. Next up we have Spider-Man 2. Again, this is still in the Sam Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man movies. I think this is where things get better. I definitely like Spider-Man 2 more than I do Spider-Man 1. I think Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is perfect. I think he's a great actor. And the special effects and the CGI for the fight scenes and everything was pretty impressive for the time. This is the movie where Peter Parker is kind of having his battles of whether or not he's going to continue to be Spider-Man. His relationship with Mary Jane is kind of on the rocks in this movie, which leads to a lot of kind of cringe moments because, Dr. Octavius recommends poetry as a way to rizz up a woman. So of course Peter Parker, starts to read poetry and then starts to say it to Mary Jane, and
Punch me, I
it's so
bleed.
cringe. And this is where we get the iconic scene where he stops the train, which I think the face he makes in that scene is hilarious, but it has become a pretty iconic moment. So yeah, I mean, there are certain elements of the movie that I'm not really crazy about. So I think I'm gonna put that along with Spider-Man 1 in the A column, because I do think it's a solid comic book movie, but I wouldn't say it's good enough for the GOAT category, in my opinion. Although I'm sure a lot of other people would disagree with me. Next up, we have Spider-Man 3. We are capping off the Sam Raimi trilogy here. Spider-Man 3 just, there are some elements of it that I like. One being Sandman. I think, that was a great choice for a villain. Also, the special effects for, Sandman for the time, like, incredible what they were able to do. Topher Grace was, a good Eddie Brock. He definitely brought that kind of, douchebag energy to the character. But then to combat that, we had, Peter Parker go off the rails and become Bully Maguire, as he has now become known. Which also made for some pretty cringe moments. You're noticing a pattern throughout these movies. throughout these movies with Peter Parker being kind of cringe. I think the main issue I have with Spider-Man 3 is just there's just too much going on. I think it's too much kind of packed into the movie. The plot kind of seems all over the place. You know, in the very beginning, we have the introduction of the new Goblin, which of course is Harry Osborn. And then, as mentioned before, we have Sandman. He's kind of the main villain of the movie. But then they also decided to add Venom in this movie. And, you know, it's not a great interpretation of Venom, in my opinion. He's way too small. I mean, the main thing that, you know, is cool about Venom is that he kind of towers over Spider-Man. Like, he's just this, you know, monstrous, like almost Hulk size creature. But they made him, you know, like the same size, if not smaller than Spider-Man. So it just, I don't know, it didn't really create for a very exciting dynamic. But I think one of the highlights of this movie is, of course, the black suit. That black Spider-Man costume is just, it's so cool. And I know it's not technically a costume because it's a symbiote, but just such a cool look. And even like since I was a kid and like watching, you know, Spectacular Spider-Man, I just always thought the black suit looked so much cooler than the red and blue. Even though the red and blue is classic, the symbiote suit is just so cool. But Spider-Man 3, you know, it's a really long movie. It can get pretty taxing after a while, but you know, not without its, you know, perks. Some pretty exciting action sequences. But overall, you know, Spider-Man 3 is just kind of a it's just kind of a mess. So I'm gonna put it in. I gotta go C. I gotta go C for Spider-Man 3. All right, next up we have the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. So this was kind of the 2010s version of Spider-Man. And one of the first things I noticed when watching these movies and when I first saw Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, I was like, this guy almost seems too cool to be Peter Parker. There was like this weird kind of punk Tony Hawk energy to this version of Peter Parker, and I don't know, like it just didn't really seem to fit with the character. Now, it's not to say he was like the coolest guy in town, but he definitely seemed like too cool to be Peter Parker. I think Andrew Garfield is great. I mean, he's, you know, not only a phenomenal actor, but I think he did a great job with Peter Parker, with Spider-Man. But this movie as a whole definitely took on a darker tone for Spider-Man, you know, with the introduction of the Lizard as the villain, which I think was a very interesting choice, but I do think it kind of made for some cool fight sequences. I think the suit actually looks pretty cool. I actually like the yellow eyes. I think that's kind of a cool look. And yes, it was another origin movie, which we didn't necessarily need to see, but I think it was a good kind of reintroduction to this character and kind of this different take on Peter Parker. And we also have you know, the introduction of Gwen Stacy as the love interest as opposed to Mary Jane, which I actually really liked, and I kind of appreciated that that kind of different take. And I think Emma Stone is, you know, fantastic as Gwen Stacy, and I think, you know, her and Andrew Garfield have, you know, really great chemistry, and, you know, obviously they ended up dating in real life, but even aside from that, like, I think, you know, that just created you know, a really cool dynamic between their two characters. So for the Amazing Spider-Man, I think I'm gonna put it in, I'll put it in the mid category. It's not really, you know, my favorite. I do think it has its flaws, but it's not terrible either. Next up we have the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, kind of similar to Spider-Man 3 in the Raimi trilogy. I do just think there was a lot going on in this movie. You know, we had, you know, Electro going on, and then we had, you know, Green Goblin show up, and then if you want to count Rhino at the end, you know, we had 3 villains, which I think could have been cool, but I just don't think it was executed the right way. I do like the idea of having Electro as the villain. It made for some really, you know, cool action sequences, and especially with like the dubstep soundtrack, I think was a very interesting choice. I didn't necessarily mind this version of the Green Goblin. I think it kind of, created this more similar interpretation to what we see in the comics. He definitely, takes on this more monstrous kind of personality. And I think the action sequence between Spider-Man and Green Goblin in the clock tower, phenomenal. 10 out of 10. I mean, they're just wailing into each other, and the way it's shot is just, it's kind of all over the place, but it's done really well, and you can still track what's going on. It's chaotic, but it's not hard to follow. And then obviously, we have the death of Gwen Stacy, which I think that scene also was just so well done, so well acted. And obviously I love the iconic shot of, where Spider-Man is diving down and he shoots his web, and the web looks like a hand going to get Gwen. I just think that's such a good choice. And then Andrew Garfield's performance, with the death of Gwen Stacy, just really, really heartbreaking. But on the downside of things, the whole subplot with like Peter Parker and like his parents, and they were like secret agents or whatever was going on there. That was kind of weird, and I don't know, just didn't really feel necessary to me. I feel like if you took that out of the movie, I don't know, I just don't think it would have suffered very much. So The Amazing Spider-Man 2, it has its downsides, but I do think it does have a lot of great moments too. So I think I'm gonna put The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I think I'll put it right beside the first one. I think I'll put it in the mid category. And moving right along to the most recent version of Spider-Man that we have, and that is Tom Holland in his trilogy of movies, starting out with Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I think in this particular version, Marvel made the right choice in introducing Peter Parker, Spider-Man, in another character's movie. So the first time we saw him, of course, was in Captain America Civil War. And when he did get his own movie in Spider-Man Homecoming, it wasn't an origin, because we had already seen the origin before, and I think they made a good choice in not just rehashing all of that. I think the main complaint I've seen about the Tom Holland version of Spider-Man is that they say he's more like Iron Boy as opposed to Spider-Man. So I think a lot of people feel as if he's, really riding on the coattails of Tony Stark. People think he kind of had everything just kind of handed to him, which he kind of did. I mean, it's not your traditional take on Peter Parker where he kind of makes everything himself. He is just kind of given this high-tech suit, and it does just kind of feel like, I don't know, like it wasn't really earned. I do think Tom Holland makes a good Peter Parker. I mean, he's not necessarily my favorite, but I do think he does a really good job. And this movie itself, where he fights the Vulture, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Vulture was like one of the first, if not like the first villain that Spider-Man fought in the comics, which I think was why they made him the villain in this movie. I think the look of the Vulture is really cool. Obviously, Michael Keaton, phenomenal. But I like how they kind of bridged the gap between what we saw in the comics with a more kind of modern, high-tech kind of version of the Vulture costume. I think the Spider-Man suit itself, I'm not crazy about it. And I think it's because for a majority of the time they didn't use like an actual physical Spider-Man suit. If you look at some of the behind the scenes of Civil War or Spider-Man Homecoming, he's wearing like a mocap suit, and then they just put the Spider-Man suit on top of that in post, which is why it kind of has this kind of smooth, glossy kind of look to it. I think the design of the suit is cool, but I'm not crazy about the appearance, like how it's translated. Like it doesn't look real. It kind of looks like a video game. I know a lot of people just obsess over the raised webbing on the costume, like in the Raimi version. That's not really something I have ever really cared about or paid attention to. But personally, I think I don't prefer the raised webbing. I think it kind of just makes it look kind of busy, makes it look kind of clunky. So all of that being said, Spider-Man: Homecoming, it's just kind of an okay movie overall. Not necessarily one that I would, be jumping to rewatch, but not to say it's bad either. So I think I'll put it in the C category. Next up, we have Spider-Man: Far From Home. This is where he takes a little vacation. So this takes place outside of the States, and he has his battles with Mysterio. Now, I think, having Mysterio as the villain is a great choice. I've been a fan of Mysterio as a Spider-Man villain since I was a kid watching the cartoons. And I think some of the sequences they did with Mysterio were just really fascinating. Where he's creating all of these illusions and everything. There's that one shot where Spider-Man's like inside Mysterio's helmet and it looks like a snow globe. Like, really, really cool stuff. But again, like, the movie as a whole, it's, not my favorite, but I do think there are, some good moments. I think I'll put it in the mid category. And finally, we have Spider-Man: No Way Home. Now this movie, just really kind of broke the internet. Unfortunately, I was spoiled before having seen the movie, but at the same time, I kind of guessed that, Maguire and Andrew Garfield were going to make an appearance in the movie. I do think, one could argue this movie is just, it's a bit of nostalgia bait. They just wanted to bring back all these characters and make all these cameos, and I do think they really kind of, relied on the wow factor and nostalgia factor of this movie. But not to say the movie was bad. I did enjoy the movie, and I think there, were a lot of very cool moments. Having all the Spider-Men kind of team up, it's like having, my childhood, kind of come into the modern day. And I don't know, like, it's just, there's something for everybody, I think, as a Spider-Man fan in this movie. So as a whole, yeah, Spider-Man: No Way Home is, it's a fun ride. It's a really, really cool, comic book movie. So I think I'll put it in the A column. Actually, you know what? I think I'll put it in the GOATed category. Why not? And next up, we have the Spider-Verse movies. I think we can all agree these are S tier. These are GOATed. I'm just gonna go ahead and put both of them in the GOATed category. The animation is fantastic. It's so different. It's not like really anything that we've seen before. Miles Morales as a character is he's just so cool, and I just love his character. I love, the take on, the Spider-Man costume is definitely more grounded, but you do get these really more fantastical elements, like when he goes into these different dimensions with all these different Spider-Men. I really like the character of Peter Parker and how he's kind of, this mentor character, but he's also kind of like a cool uncle. Gwen Stacy, I think, is another great inclusion in these movies as Spider-Gwen. Oh my gosh, and Spider-Man 2099, dude, just like the epitome of cool. But yeah, the Spider-Verse movies are just so fun, so rewatchable, and they're just so different. And like, as an artist myself, as someone who likes to draw, who loves cartoons, and of course is a nerd, these are like everything that I could want in an animated movie, but also a Spider-Man movie. It just makes it so much cooler. And also on our tier maker here, they have the Venom movies. Now, unfortunately, I can't give my opinion on these movies because I have not seen the Venom movies. I have, however, unfortunately seen Morbius, and I think we can all agree where that goes. Madam Web, I never saw, but I don't think I'm really missing anything aside from Sydney Sweeney. But yeah, that kind of caps off our tier maker here. So there you have it. That is my list of the Spider-Man movies that we've gotten so far. With Spider-Man Brand New Day currently in production, I thought this would kind of be a fun video to make. Let me know your thoughts on my tier list here in the comments below, but do just remember, it is my opinion. Yours may differ. And let me know what you think is gonna happen in Spider-Man Brand New Day. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the support. Please be sure to give the video a like and subscribe, and as always, catch you later.